Welcome to the Forward Food Tech podcast. In today's episode, we're speaking with Jim McDougall, co-founder and commercial director at Outfield. Outfield enables growers to rapidly image fruit crops with self-flying drones, then receive yield forecasts and productivity maps from a cloud-based machine learning system. Jim, along with his co-founder Ollie, founded Outfield to make the global fruit industry more productive, more profitable, and more sustainable. Jim is Outfield's commercial director and sales lead, engaging with companies and organizations across the fruit and agri-tech sectors. Before Outfield, Jim worked as a risk consultant advising private equity firms on mergers and acquisitions with a focus on environmental and social governance. Outfield are based in Cambridge, UK, and are currently focused on raising their seed funding round. Enjoy the conversation between Rob and Jim.
Hello, Jim, and welcome to the Forward Food Tech podcast. This is Jim McDougall, and he is a co-founder at Outfield. Outfield is a really interesting business. Can you tell us what you do, please, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. So Outfield's been around for a few years now, and what we do is we make the fruit industry more efficient, more productive, and reduce the waste and the environmental impact of growing fruit around the world. The way that works is we set our growers up with drones. It's their own drones, and they fly them themselves using maps that we send them. This technology is incredible now. It's all automated, and the drones more or less fly themselves. Then they send us those images, and we tell them how many fruit they've got or how many blossoms they've got, and give them back productivity maps of their orchard, allowing them to make better interventions, forecast their yields, sell more fruit.
So it's top fruit,
all top fruit, yeah. So we focused again to get to apples. So we're doing apples and pears now, but the same rules apply in vineyards, in citrus fruit, and in stone fruit. And we're doing trials in all those at the moment.
So as a strawberry grower, I remember going out to count flowers in rows to try and do our crop forecasting, and it was pretty awful. And from a level of accuracy perspective, farmers before they were using your system, what was the level of accuracy on forecasting their top fruit yields? The thresholds of what was that?
So if you ask any one grower, they'll tell you it's more accurate than the average. No one's below average, as is often the case. But the marketing and distribution desk will tell you that the average yield forecast is off by about 20%, which means that they're working to try and sell fruit about 20% less than what's probably going to come through, so they aren't left short at the end of the season. Because if they oversell and can't hit the quotas that they've sold, they'll lose that customer. Even worse than that in New Zealand, the last 3 years, because the climate's been changing out there and it's becoming harder and harder to predict. Their global forecast for Jazz apples across New Zealand has been off by 30%, and that's just very hard to manage.
That's fascinating. So you're looking at plus or minus 20%, so there's a 40% potential difference.
Yeah.
And when are the deals struck? I guess it's before they're picked.
It is, yeah. So they start negotiating contracts early in the season. And obviously, every grower is different. They all have different setups and different marketing desks. So some go straight into one big company, or some distribute through marketing desks. But they'll be finalizing contracts through June, July, and August. But they won't know what they've got until they get them, in the pack house in October. And there's various factors that affect what you actually get, not just how many fruit there are, but also what size they are, so who you can sell them to, the quality of those fruit, and the ones you have to reject. And actually 30% of the fruit grown in the UK doesn't make it off the farm, because it'll either be under spec or undersold, or will never be taken out of storage. As
someone who's been horticulture for most of my life, being underselling should be a criminal offence. Yeah, sure. and the marketing desk should be put in prison for it, in my opinion. The amount of times that happens, because the concern to get it sold pushes prices to a situation to then possibly get the right price, or more likely to undersell it. So you were previously looking at a potential variance of 40%. What level have you got to now? What's the best forecast, closest you've got to actually, from your system, to actually then a picked crop? How far have you got with that? With a caveat that for some crop structures and for some varieties, we're consistently under 10% error now, which is huge for these guys, because it means that not only can they manage their orchards to that level and get the right number of fruit per tree, so they get the right size and the right management, but then exactly as we we're just saying, they can be more confident in those forecasts, so they can sell more at a premium price as well by selling them earlier in the season. So I'm going to ask you crazy, how many tons of apples are produced, or top fruit produced in the world? And if we took a 20% off that, how many tons of that would be? Actually, don't even bother, but it's a lot. So it is a lot. Yeah. And So what we're looking at is accurate forecasting. Preparing for this call, we also talked about other things it does, the mapping technology, and therefore the precision management of the crop after that. Just go through into that because it's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest value points of this, obviously, is the sales point. Fits really nicely with the grower's management of the crop. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in an orchard with a grower, but if you stand there for about 2 minutes, they will habitually start doing things to their trees. They'll start picking off apples that they don't want to be there or pruning them to encourage growth. Growers do this innately because they know that you can manage a tree to get the perfect yield on a year. Now, a tree will change by up to 3-fold year on year because they're biennial. So you have to be able to manage individual trees, targeted in a specific way to maximize what you're getting out of them. Now, there's no way of doing that at the moment, really, because one orchard will have 5,000 trees in it. And if you go to one farm of orchards, they'll have 500,000 trees. It's apple trees as far as the eye can see. And a farm that size will have 5 guys most of the year round. So you can't possibly know what's happening on every row in every corner of the orchard. And even more than an arable, because the perennial tree crops are big 3D structures, you can only see about 20 trees at once, and then you've forgotten what the first one looked like. You can't see the whole orchard at once. So that's where Outfield comes in. And the first product that we started providing was giving people productivity maps of their orchards, telling them how many blossoms they had per tree, and then how many fruit they had per tree, so that they can work to homogenize that orchard. At the moment, they'll spray to thin blossoms or to thin fruitlets or to fixed blossoms to increase the number per tree. But they'll do that in a blanket spray across the orchard. What we can do is we can tell you spray these 5 rows, not these 5. Or now we can tell you spray this tree and not the next one. Spray less on this tree, more on this tree. Now that precision spray bit's coming in this year, so I don't want to overpromise that, but we're doing trials in it right now. It's very exciting.
This is a lot more than yield mapping. This is almost like sat nav for pruning. And I'm sorry to use a name that probably doesn't work, but it's just this. I guess this is as a farm. The farmer mindset, which we all have here, is this overcomplicating a problem, or is this a way to really make a significant difference to the bottom line? I could imagine any farm that is using blanket treatments for anything now will not be doing that within 5 years. So there's precision techniques across all forms that has been helped by this sat nav sort of thinking. The computer-aided science that's making it possible. It's the level of chemical inputs you can reduce, or even much more importantly, the value you can get by that extra detail. Because it is digitalized, it then becomes efficient to be able to manage it. But you couldn't process that as a human being, other than having 50 years of experience. And labor is a big one in horticulture, or getting hold of good trained labor.
And I've got to say at this point as well, the guys who run the orchards do a phenomenal job of doing it. I'm huge credit to the growers, because they do such an incredible job of predicting and refining their orchards based on data that is mostly gathered by eye. So it's a hell of a skill, but there's definitely space in there to improve on that. And that's where new technologies come into it.
So just to recap here, we're looking at going from a 40% potential variance in yield forecasting, but also a third of fruit is left on the farm because of quality issue. To turn that on its head, the level of inputs you're putting in, and then I presume and I'd love to talk to you about how your data interchanges with other providers of usages, how you intermix. And what we're seeing with other ag tech innovations is that the ones that have really got this interchangeable platforms with enabling it, making it very easy for other people to use that system, i.e. hypothetically spraying, or a robot arm that could do pruning or whatever, because you're not doing that, but you're enabling it to map it to happen. They are the ones that are succeeding. So the ability to be very good at one thing, but also very easy to interchange with other areas, it seems to be the way forward. Talk us through how that works. Maybe an example of a technical partner. And all you do is you knowledge share between one data set to another. Yeah.
One that I know that I can talk about very openly is the Precision Orchard Dosing Project, which is an Innovate UK funded research project that Outfield are quite heavily involved in. We're into the 3rd year of that now, and what that's looking at is taking blossom mapping data and using that to precision apply fruitless thinning agent with the view, as we were saying earlier, to get the right number of fruit on every tree. If you look along any one row of the orchard at blossom time, you'll have a tree that's covered in blossoms. And then you have another one that's very sparse, one that's medium, one that's sparse, and so on. They're incredibly variable. And if you can go in and you can apply the right amount of blossom fixing or blossom thinning agents, you can just get the right number of fruit on the tree right from the get. Outfield doesn't do spraying equipment. We have no idea how to do any of that. I do have a mechanical engineering degree, but it's not my area of expertise at all. But what you need in order to do any of those things is you need to know how many blossoms are on every tree, and you need to know where every tree is, accurate to a few centimeters that you can spray in the right place. And that's what Outfield System does. With a really cheap drone, in 20 minutes, you can get a survey of your entire orchard, high GPS accuracy, knowing where every tree is, informing the mapping for those precision systems, and then also telling them what to apply and where. And the other bit that we need to feed into that, is the plant science knowledge to know how much to spray in which place. So the partners on this project are MP Seymour, who builds bespoke spray equipment down in Kent, and also NIAB, who are doing the plant science aspects, and a few others as well, Hutchinson's with their agronomy background, etc.
So this is all very UK based, but I hear you're now looking to move abroad and reach out to there. Tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, sure. So we realized early on that in the UK, the season lasts 6 months, and then everyone goes off and does something else for a while. So we made a move quite early in this to also work in South Africa. Same time zone, easy to get to, and it means that we're operating all the way through the year because we can jump between the two seasons. The demands and the pressures are very similar internationally, though. And so the fruit industry everywhere in the world, there are obviously subtle differences. South African trees are 4 meters tall, whereas UK ones are 2 meters tall. But the same pressures are there, and the same technology is needed to digitize and then optimize your orchards.
So how many trees do you think? So how many hectares do you think you'll be working with next year or this year?
Yeah, so last year we had beta test users in 4 different countries. We covered 600 hectares, which is about 300,000 trees. This year we're looking to do about 10 times that at least. So we're trying to get into the millions this year, and obviously all that data continues to improve our system as well, which is great for us.
The big question is, what's the bottom line here? What's the financial impact you're having?
So the biggest impact that we can have is improving the productivity for our growers and improving how much they can sell of what they're already making. Growers work in the UK at least between a -2 and a +9% profit margin. On a really good year, you'll make 9%. On a really bad year, you'll lose money on your orchard. So what we can do is we can take a 50 tons per hectare grower up to 55 tons per hectare just by making sure they've got the right number of fruit on every tree. And then we can tell you in advance what to sell, and then you can sell it for at least 5 or 10% more. And actually speaking to the marketing desk, probably a bit more than that.
And what's that per hectare then in cash contribution?
Yeah, sure. So we're looking at taking up profit margins by about 30%. We're looking at adding about £1,000 per hectare in value, and it costs you at the moment about £100 per hectare to use our system. And as we're adding in more features now,
you beat me to my next question. Thank you. So basically, you what costs £1, they should get £10 back.
Exactly.
Or whatever, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, whatever currency you're using. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on. What's got you into this? What got you? Where did this come from? And what other industries have you been involved in to inspire you to then use this into horticulture?
Yeah, brilliant. So before Outfield, I was working in the private equity space doing environmental social governance, which really means looking at the risks that people are taking on when they're buying oil rigs or chemical facilities or farms. And one of the biggest aspects of that was environmental damage. And we were looking at farmland in the Ukraine near a chemical facility and realizing that the data that they had was usually just in a book. If you say to someone, what did you spray last year or what were your yields? They'll just grab a book off the shelf behind them and tell you. And there's such a huge gap in terms of the technology that's available there. At the same time, the other founder, Ollie, was working in the aeronautical engineering space, and he was very aware, he's a huge drones enthusiast, and was very aware of what technology was available and what could be done with it, particularly around the data capture and also the machine learning aspects, understanding what's in those images. So we put our heads together and realized that in terms of all the problems that we were seeing coming up in the world, food security, environmental damage, looking at feeding the growing population, all that good stuff, that there needed to be more efficiency here, and that we could find some solutions to do that. So we first started working with NIAB here in Cambridge, the National Institute of Agriculture and Botany, plant science researchers who they were looking for innovative and technical solutions to be able to do more in their space. They know that they had a big labor shortage because they'll send PhD students or postdocs who know more about plants than I ever will into the field for 6 weeks at a time to go and count the leaves on plants. And this is not an efficient way of assessing crop health. So we started working with them, and through them we got to explore the whole industry, from arable crops through to plants, vegetables and ground veg, through to horticulture. And we kept on getting dragged back to horticulture, particularly to perennial crops, because the value is much higher, and because the ability to make interventions is much higher, and because the need was so much more. So over time, we found ourselves very focused on apples, and now, vineyards and stone fruits as well.
It's the oldest one in the book, but you can't solve the problems from which in the world in which they've been created. And right. It sounds like coming out of the industry completely to look back in, you've really got something exciting here. That's a key message that we have at Forward Food Tech, is that think about technology across all platforms of different sectors, and fintech is a great inspiration for a lot of food and ag tech trading platforms. There's already a lot of stuff out there that's been done, and they're very good at it. I live in central London, and they're pretty good at facial recognition software,
right?
Or let's call it iris recognition now with the eye, and how all this interchanges as a huge technological community, and interchanging with other people who've got ideas is the best way forward. It's great what you've done there.
I don't think anyone was thinking when they were designing these technologies that this is how we'd be using it, though. The facial recognition technology, I don't think they were thinking we'll be using it to count apples. The drone technology to survey orchards, cloud computing to upload this data. So yeah, it's an amazing confluence of new and exciting technologies for sure.
Well, there's some amazing. They're using the same technology to monitor poultry and predict welfare issues. So way ahead of any human. And that's the world that we're talking about now. So long as it makes money on the farm and it's delivered in a way that it's simplifying a problem, not just replacing a complex problem with an even more complex answer, then we're into good business here for everybody. Yeah, that's what we believe in. And it sounds like you're on that too.
Say that to any agri-tech startup who's in this space, who's trying to get into this, that exactly as you say, you can have an impact, you can change the world, you can improve food security, you can reduce environmental impacts. But first and foremost, it's got to be a business. If it's not affecting someone's bottom line, if it's not making someone money, you can never have the scale or the impact that you need. So those two things, I think, go hand in hand. It's not impact or business, it's impact through business.
Good to hear. I couldn't agree with you more. and I can tell you investors are thinking that too. So yeah. And this one day it'll be a profitable idea and it's just not the way forward. And we're talking about the impact for the customer here. Obviously, some ag tech businesses will take a while to go through the machine learning data to get critical mass, and that's obviously a challenge. So, what has been your biggest challenge you think you've overcome?
For us as a business, one thing that we continue having to keep a very close eye on is the diversity of different solutions that are possible in this space, and making sure that we're using ones that, exactly as we were just saying, are affecting the grower's bottom line, are providing value to the grower, and that are scalable as well, that enough people around the world can use. If I ever speak to any growers about this, they get really excited about the technology that we're providing. And then the next thing that happens is say, oh, could you also do tree row volumes? Could you also track the spraying system in the field? Could you also tell me more about almond crops? There's a million ideas that come out. And some of them are really good, but the growers aren't outfield and they don't know how hard some of those things will be to do. And it might fix a problem for Charles down the road, but it might not fix a problem for growers all around the world. So one of our biggest challenges has been making sure that we stay super focused on what it is that we're delivering and making sure that we're delivering value to the growers and not just exciting ideas.
That is so true. Well done. Great. Because there's so easy to get distracted. Single solution for a single problem and focus on that. Brilliant. A bit mean really to ask you this, but if you could rewind the tape, the old school videotape of your journey from starting the business at the very beginning to where you are today, and you went back to the beginning, what would be the one thing that you would do differently?
That's a really interesting question. If I'd known then what I know now, we'd have focused on horticulture a lot sooner. There are a few rabbit holes that we went down exploring products that would have made a perfectly successful business, but not a big enough business, if that makes sense. So I think we could have done that earlier. And I think also just having faith in the speed at which technology comes through. There are some ideas that we've come back to, a year later, realizing that technology from other sectors has gone faster than we thought. The drone technology being a great example. If you go back 3.5 years, we were building our own drones, crashing our own drones all across Kent and East Anglia. Now I can send a drone. I've got a video of my 5-year-old goddaughter flying a drone automatically at the touch of a button. That's how the technology's come along. So I think having that foresight of how quickly these technologies are going to move would have been really, really useful.
It's a difficult one to call, isn't it? Because you had lots of options, and I guess that we push for is get that minimum viable product out there as quickly as possible and fail as quickly as possible, but affordably. and
Yeah,
then
indeed.
and then pick the winner that's going to take it forward. So fail quickly and affordably as possible. That's the biggest lesson for any startup. So you've had a fantastic journey and you've got an amazing opportunity, and it's really exciting. I really look forward to seeing your progress and hopefully having you back here one day to hear how this has moved on. So your journey, you must have met some interesting people and some really influential people. Who would you like to thank to help you get to where you've got to?
I'm really glad you asked, actually, because I mean, so many people, and there's no way we could have gone down the journey that we have without the support of lots of people around us. I'm going to miss plenty, but I guess the ones that spring to mind immediately are NIAB, particularly Charles Whitfield, and the team down in EMR who have given us tons of opportunities and tons of insight into plant science and are passionate about the research and the technology. They kind of gave us our start. Belinda Clark here in Cambridge in the UK. She's head of Agritech East or Agritech E now, sorry, they're called. And they're a fantastic network that have connected us to so many people. The Judge Business School here in Cambridge, we've been on their accelerator program, got business support there, and they've helped keep us straight on the sort of business acumen for years. And I mean, lots of growers, but one that really pops into my mind is Tom Hume down at AC Hume in Kent, just south of Canterbury, who's really passionate and really enthusiastic and skeptical about everything that we do, which is really powerful because he's always keen to see where we can go and also asking challenging questions. So he's been great. We've done a lot of work with him, and thanks to Tom.
That's brilliant. We thank you because you've been very honest and open about your business. You've got solid metrics that make a big difference to a farming business. The world needs a lot more fruit, and it sounds like you're going to help them do it more profitably. It's been a great pleasure to meet you, Jim. We can't wait to hear your next steps, and good luck with hitting your targets for this year. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Rob. Real pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for listening, and we hope you stay healthy in the midst of this global pandemic. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more information and takeaways from this episode, please visit forwardfood.tech. See you next time.